This is the 16th game of the World Championship 1986 between Kasparov and KARPov. This game is Relopaz C92. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop B5, A6, driving away the bishop, bishop A4, knight F6, Kasparov castles, bishop E7, rook E1, B5, bishop B3, D6, C3, KARPov castles, C3, bishop B7. Many people had expected KARPov to get back to the Petrov defense, that is second move knight F6. Here he played second move knight C6. That has got him a draw in game 6, especially since he lost game 14 playing the Relopaz. It is only logical that without some improvement somewhere in the variation, KARPov cannot play it again. Something is afloat. D4, rook E8, knight B D2, bishop F8, A4, H6, bishop C2, E into D4, C into D4, knight B4, bishop B1, C5, D5, knight D7, rook A3, C4. Up to this point, the players have followed their 14th match game, where Kasparov continued A into B, A into B before playing knight D4. Kasparov must have been a little uneasy. KARPov was still following their 14th game, which KARPov had lost. What a surprise had looked up. Knight D4, queen F6. Queen F6 is a very good move. Instead of queen F6, if black plays knight E5, let us go back and see that. Knight E5, A into B5, queen B6, knight the second flank to F3, B D3, and black obtained positional compensation for the sacrificed pawn. KARPov has taken only 12 minutes on his clock, and Kasparov now took 32 minutes for his reply. This was queen F6 was KARPov's idea throughout this game. Probably he might have analyzed and prepared for these variations. So let us go back. KARPov played the beautiful move queen F6, knight second flank to F3, knight C5, A into B5, A into B5, knight into B5. Instead of knight into B5, if rook into A8, let us go back and see. Rook into A8, rook into A8, knight into B5, rook A1, Rook a1 is very unpleasant for white. It is interesting to compare this game with the 16th game of the 1985 match. There KARPov with white pieces had a knight standard on a3. Okay, let us go back. The last move played is knight into b5. Rook into a3. Knight into a3. If instead of knight into a3, b into a3, let us go back and see. B into a3, knight b, d3, bishop into d3, knight into d3. With great pressure as he is threatening queen a1. Okay, let us go back. Last move played is knight into a3, bishop a6, rook e3, rook b8. Instead of rook b8, black has much pressure on the queen side for his pawn. The text move allows white to open the center. If knight b d3, let us go back and see that. Knight b d3, instead of rook b8, knight b d3, bishop into d3, knight into d3, queen a4. Instead of queen a4, let us see another variation is there. Queen c2, instead of queen a4, queen c2, rook c8, or after queen a4, rook a8, bishop d2, queen into b2, knight into c4, queen b1, and black has equalizing chances. Let us go back. The last move played is rook b8, e5. e5 is an excellent move. If instead of e5, knight e1, let us go back and see. Before that, this e5 was played after 19 minutes of thought and taking the game along the tactical lines. His main alternative was the positional knight e1 when black could go wrong with g6. Let us go back and see. Instead of e5, if knight e1, g6, bishop d2, queen into b2. Queen into b2 is a bad move. Bishop c3. Bishop c3 is an excellent move, blocking the long diagonal a1 h8. Queen into a3, queen d4, queen d4 threatening mate. So let us go back. Last move played is e5, d into e5, knight into e5, knight b d3, knight g4, queen b6. Queen b6 is an excellent move. Rook g3. Why rook g3? Because it is necessary to attack the king side, as the defense of the queen side will be of no use, because all the black pieces are swarming in queen side. g6. Instead of g6, if black plays king h8, let us go back and see that combination. knight into h6, g into h6, queen g4, queen g6, queen f3, knight e5, or instead of knight e5, if black plays, let us go back and see that also. Queen h7, bishop e3, bishop g7, bishop into c5. Let us go back. The last move played is g6, bishop into h6. If knight into h6, let us see that. If knight into h6, bishop into h6, bishop into h6, and white's attack has lost the sting. So the last move played is, instead of knight into h6, bishop into h6, queen into b2, queen f3, knight d7. Knight d7 is a excellent move. Bishop into f8, king into f8, king h2, rook b3. Rook b3 is a excellent move. Both are running short of time, but both are making very good moves. Bishop into d3, c into d3, queen f4, queen into a3. Queen into a3 is a bad move. After this game is lost, but Karpov was running short of time. Knight h6, queen e7, rook into g6, queen e5, rook g8 check, king e7, d6 check. d6 is a very good move. King e6, rook e8, king d5, rook into queen, d7, rook b8. Rook b8 is to prevent this pawn from becoming queen. The World Championship and also many more beautiful games of Bobby Fischer. Thanks for watching once again.